Nickelodeon All Star Brawl is finally confirmed to be announced after rumors and speculation, and the internet is going wild. Old, current, and nostalgic fans of Nickelodeon and fighting games are coming back alive. There will be a netcode to actually satisfy people interested in online play, and the roster they announced so far is pretty damn cool. Not only did they show off 14 characters at launch, SpongeBob, Patrick and Sandy from SpongeBob, Leo and Michelangelo from the 1987 incarnation of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, bold choice, Lincoln Loud and his sister Lucy, Reptar, the dinosaur toy from Rugrats, Helga from Hey Arnold, which actually makes more sense than Arnold, Invader Zim with Dora on the side, Oblina from Aaah! Real Monsters, something I didn't even remember existed, Nigel from the Wild Thornberrys, I thought if they would ever make a fighting game, the monkey and the girl would get in first, Danny Phantom, and someone else I had no idea existed, Powdered Toast Man from the Ren and Stimpy show. But if you look at the box art, you can see silhouettes for Cora, CatDog, Ren, Stimpy, who may or may not be one character or two separate ones, and potentially Aaah. That's 18 to 19 characters right there, and for a fighting game crossover of Nicktoons, that's a bold start. Also, come on, y'all didn't expect Avatar characters to make it in the game? Of course Korra and Aaah are going to be in. But the game is coming out this fall, maybe either October or November, but unlike King of Fighters 15, it's actually coming to the Switch! And I'm genuinely excited for the game. So we got a few months, now on everyone's mind is who's going to make the roster, and honestly, I think I have a good idea. The developers worked on a fighting mobile game called Slap City, but the roster is pretty small, so I looked at two games as a reference to the number of characters that could be in the game. Cartoon Network Punch Time Explosion XL and Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2. Now, Cartoon Network Punch Time Explosion XL had 26 characters, and while it wasn't sound competitively since the developers weren't top tier, it was honestly still a fun game outside of the bugs and glitches. They had a solid roster from 11 franchises, even though it would have been nice for a sequel to include Courage, The Eds, Adventure Time, Regular Show, and a few others that started at the time of development. Then I looked at Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2, and it had a roster of 30 characters, including JoJo Siwa. I will talk about her later, but it feels like 30 is a good estimate to how many characters are going to make the roster, so I'll probably get announcements for the silhouetted characters plus 11 to 12 more. So why is this a top 20 and not a top 10 or 11? Well, you see, Nickelodeon has too many iconic and cult classic characters that's just impossible for me to ignore. In fact, there's so many that I have a list for both the characters and honorable mentions. But before we begin, I have a few criteria for this list. With two exceptions, this is a game strictly focused on Nicktoons characters and Nickelodeon characters. As much fun as it would be seeing Jeanette and McCurdy and Ariana Grande come back as Sam Puckett and Cat Valentine as animated versions of themselves to fight the cast of Big Time Rush, they're not on the list. Second, there won't be any third-party shows that Nick doesn't own the rights or lost the expired rights to. There are a few Nicktoons and Nickelodeon characters that are in a way gray area. Damn, I would love to put Shuriken School to be on this list, but that was made by Jetix Syrup. When it comes down to whether or not they could be allowed in, and while I won't go over all of them, expect a few. 3. I haven't included any shows that Nickelodeon hasn't aired yet. Outside of the Rugrats revival, I did not include Garfield, Big Nate, Star Trek, or any Transformers character. 4. No preschool Nick Jr. or Nick Noggin characters are making it on the list. Don't get me wrong, I love the Backyardigans and Dora growing up, but it's a fighting game. If you see my Wattpad or know me in real life, I may be sociopathic, but I don't want to see Danny Phantom use the Ghostly Whale to beat the stuffing out of Blue's Clues. Come on people, let's have some decency. 5. This is just my opinion with facts and logic. Assuming there's a lot of Nickelodeon shows I will be mentioning, so if you have some free time, I suggest looking them up because unless your name is SpongeBob or The Loud House, a Nicktoon show you probably grew up with probably got the unfair axe, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. Now that that's out of the way, let's get to the honorable mentions. There are a lot of iconic and cult classic Nickelodeon and Nicktoons characters, but sadly I'm not sure all of them are going to make it in. And hopefully some of these end up as DLC, but as for honorable mentions, let's talk about them because I might be wrong and hopefully some of them show up as playable, even if a few of them are ones that I personally wouldn't prefer, but others would, as well as ones that I would like to see confirmed, but probably won't because of said licensing issues. First character, Doug. Doug is the first Nicktoon, and alongside Rugrats and the Ren and Stimpy show, their debut on TV screens in 1991 splat Nickelodeon into the eye of animation, introducing original animated series that died back in the 80s with all the Saturday morning shows existing just to make money. The only problem is that Doug's not exactly a character fit for a fighting game. I could see him in his Quailman fantasies where he beats up Dinosaur Roger, but let me know if you think he could work, especially since I didn't grow up with the show. 2. Rocko and Heffler. I don't remember that much about Rocko's modern life, but they're iconic Nicktoon characters to the point that they made it into kart racers too. I could see them in their Ghostbusters gear teaming up to fight baddies, but if you have ideas for his moveset, put them in the comments. Number 3, a Winx Club rep. Now, Winx Club's ownership under Nickelodeon hasn't been great from what I've heard, between seasons 5 and 7 with only 8 being okay at best. But Winx Club is still well known enough in the public sphere thanks to the very divisive fate the Winx Club saga, but it's hard to tell if Nickelodeon still owns the rights to her and the show. If I had to include someone, either Aisha because, well, she's the best Winx from the original series, hashtag Black Girl Magic, hashtag not sorry, Flora because whitewashing her into Terra, no, or Tekna because for some reason she isn't in Fate. What, 6 girls is too much for an all-girl lead cast about fairies and female friendships? 4. Poe from Kung Fu Panda, the Penguins of Madagascar, and anyone from Monsters vs. Aliens. Alright, hold up. Before anyone gets mad at me and starts putting dislikes, yes, I would absolutely love to see Poe, the Penguins, heck, even Ginormica or Blob as playable characters. So why on earth are they on the honorable mentions lists? Well, Nickelodeon doesn't own the rights to them anymore. DreamWorks and Nickelodeon made a deal to make animated shows based on their movies. Kung Fu Panda got Legends of Awesomeness, Penguins got their show, and Monsters vs. Aliens as well. But Nick didn't want to pay the licensing fees to keep the show going, so Nick canceled all 3, DreamWorks jumped to Netflix, and Nickelodeon is banned from airing the shows or using them as promotional material ever again. Now, that's only for the TV shows, so maybe the developers could get a temporary license to use them for the game, but I wouldn't hold my breath, so don't blame me, blame Nickelodeon. And it's a shame too. Poe would be perfect for a fighting game. He's had one that was okay. Mockrock had a great idea about using the Penguins as a stance character that switches between the 4 penguins, and Blob summoning Ginormica for attacks or a super would be cool. But here's hoping that I'm wrong. Number 5 is also a tie between Kid Danger and JoJo Siwa. Okay, the rule I had about not using live-action characters still applies, but these two are in a weird possible category. I'm above the age of Henry Danger and Danger Force's demographic, but I thought the show was at the very least decent and mostly ambitious out of the more recent sitcoms. And Kid Danger had that bad animated series and was also an animated character on the mobile Nick Brawler. So because of the animated show, I could see the devs putting him in since Danger Force is still continuing the franchise. As for JoJo, yeah, it's weird she was in Kart Racers too, but I'm not mad at her, I'm just mad that Jimmy and Timmy weren't in it, and I'm not going to take that anger out on a child. Well, I think she's 18 now, but that being said, if she were to pull up in the game, it would be freaking hilarious that she returned, but the baby versus JoJo drama that was just the baby doing wordplay would be so funny if JoJo became playable, and everyone was like, oh, JoJo can fight, the baby better watch his back. Also, certain people on the internet get outraged whenever a young adult/teen idol comes out as LGBT, so if JoJo comes into the game and people complain, that's free advertising for the game. And it's so funny that I consider her an honorable mention too, just based on that. Wow, JoJo Siwa has a better chance of making it into a Nickelodeon fighting game than Poe from Kung Fu Panda. That's not a sentence I never thought I'd have to say out loud. Number 6, and Beavers. They're not exactly important to me personally, but people like them, and the roster choosers are willing to go retro, so I can see them in. 7, Rocket Power. Rocket Power is a weird one because you can make a fighting game character out of a sports player like Wii Fit Trainer worked in Smash, and Rival Schools has characters whose fighting styles are literally based off the sports that they play, but I'm not sure Rocket Power is remembered fondly. And not only are half the main crew jerks, opinions on this show are pretty split when you go back to look at it. But if someone's recovery move is them using a half pipe to hit the opponent while getting some air, then yeah, put a Rocket Power rep in. Number 8, Crocker from the Fairy OddParents. Now I have a certain Fairy OddParent character on the list for the villain side that would be more fitting, and I'd be fine with him in the game, but he would make more sense as a boss character than a playable one. Also, number 9, Professor Calamitous and Beautiful Gorgeous. Okay, I wasn't pissed Gorgeous made it into Nicktoons Globs of Doom, but these two are on the more iconic side of Jimmy Neutron's Rogues Gallery. But for now, I'd say they work as bosses since we don't need too many gadget users in the roster, although I could see Gorgeous fighting like Chun-Li or Jiri. The X's. Number 10. Fitting. Now, I almost included them on the list, but the X's are really obscure, and like Rocket Power, it was hard to determine which one. Patrick Warburton would be too hard to get back as Mr. Tucker X. He wouldn't be that hard. Trudy X's voice actress is playing Ida on The Loud House, and Truman's VA was just on The Walking Dead in 2019. Tuesday, the daughter, is the only one who seems MIA in terms of voice actress, but the show won an Annie Award back in 2006 in spite of having one season. I'm not too sure they would get picked, but I would be down for it, especially since episodes would air late at night that were so hard to find even on Nicktoons where it got dumped. 11. Otis from Back at the Barnyard. Hey look, another Nickelodeon show dumped to Nicktoons with episode premieres getting dumped at a bad time slot. I wonder how common that's going to be on the list. But I feel like Otis is ridiculous enough as a character that I can see him working out, but he's on the lower end of characters I want in. For number 12, in a similar position to Otis, there's Tak and the Power of Juju, which I was okay with. Tak was in Toy Bots and Globs of Doom, and I would be okay with him coming back. It'd be a nice return to have 2000s Nickelodeon representations, but I have a few more people that fit that description much, much more. 13, and yes, I did consider Bessie from the Mighty B, but she doesn't have a crap ton that could be used as a moveset, but I'd be pleasantly surprised to see her. Plus, I have a ton of females on this roster that I know people are going to love more. 14, I actually did consider the breadwinners, but out of the 2010s Nickelodeon shows with duo protagonists, I put someone on the list who fits much better and isn't as controversially panned as them. Number 15, Harvey Beaks. This was another one I considered, which would be awesome since Nickelodeon put the show in the graveyard slot, and then the creator called him out for doing so only for Nickelodeon to force him to do a public apology. But sadly, when Harvey Beaks was airing, I was too busy to watch it, but if he and his friend show up in the game so far, I would genuinely be okay with seeing them. Besides, C.H. Greenblatt created Chowder, and Chowder and Kimchi worked as a fighter in Cartoon Network's fighting game, so it's possible that a Harvey Beaks character could work out. 16, Clyde and Ronnie from The Loud House. Two characters that I like, but are really divisive in the Loud House and animation community, but I think Lincoln and Lucy were the best possible picks. But I feel like if a franchise should get 3 reps, at the most, so other franchises can get represented, I don't think the Loud House needs any more members to be added. And 17, I did consider Garfield since he has material to work off, but I thought it might be too early, and I took him off for the rules' sake that I established. But he's a high possibility amongst all the announced shows coming soon. 18, Raph and Donatello from TMNT. Yeah, again, it's a bold choice having 2 out of the 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles being on the roster and them being from the 80s cartoon. I would prefer if you had one turtle from the 80s, 2003, 2012, and then the Rise incarnation, but if we don't get them, they would not be a massive deal breaker. 19, Miraculous Ladybug sadly can't make it Miraculous Ladybug sadly can't make it either. While I'm on the side of the internet that doesn't hate Marinette, and it would be cool to see Ladybug and Cat Noir make it into a console game as a fighter, they're third party. Nickelodeon gave up on the series after it got them 1 million views back 11 times in a row, put episode 12 at 6 p.m. on a Sunday night, secretly aired extra episodes on Nicktoons, and then announced they're burning off the remaining half of the season at 8 a.m. with Royal Academy, forcing the creators to bring the show to Netflix and later Disney and Disney Plus to save it, so sadly Miraculous characters aren't going to be in a Nickelodeon crossover. 20, Power Rangers is one I've seen people bring up, and as a token Nickelodeon fan that cares about its third and fourth parties, they won't be appearing. Especially with the contract issues between Nickelodeon and PR combined with how apathetic they treat the series. In terms of who I want, if it was possible, I would say Beast Morphers Red with Devon's speed and Sentai footage, or Yellow with Zoe's Kamen Rider and rapid fighting style. But since Dino Fury is a new one, Zayto has enough of a moveset with the power keys for Red, but Izzy/Green took the internet by storm, thanks to Skirtgate, even though her debut as a speedster using dual swords and a javelin to fight combined with her speed would actually be a pretty rad character. Besides, Power Rangers already has a fighting game. Its roster is just not bad, but complex to talk about. And my final honorable mention is Mysticons. Honestly, this show feels like a nice blend of Winx Club, Power Ranger Seasons, and TMNT 2012 done right. I take this show about 4 girls from different backgrounds becoming mystical, animal-themed, magical superheroines to combat demons, and each of the 4 girls, Dragon Mage, Knight, Striker, and Ranger, all have movesets that would work in this game. But the reason they're not on the list is because it's a girl-led show on Nickelodeon that, even if it wasn't third party, is part of many girl-led Nickelodeon shows that they decided to cancel early on without giving it much of a chance, combined with, alongside The Legend of Korra, My Life as a Teenage Romance, Mighty Bee, Tanya, Miraculous Ladybug, or in the case of executive meddling, Sam and Cats. Does anyone else find it weird that the president of Nickelodeon for 2 decades was a woman who screwed over almost every lead show with a girl? Alright, let me move on to the roster because this is getting depressing. So, as cool as it would be, Mysticon's a really underrated show can't make my list. Though I'll say this. This show is what Fate the Winx Club the Winx Saga should have been. And that's the end of the honorable mentions featuring a ton of unappreciated Nickelodeon and Nicktoons shows alongside JoJo Siwa. And if you're wondering, wow, that's a lot of franchises Nickelodeon owns, how come most of these aren't still around? Well, welcome to Nickelodeon, the channel that mistreats the people, animators, directors, screenwriters like dirt unless their hard work creates a show that can make as much views and money as SpongeBob does in a 2-week time span. But before this gets more depressing than my life, let's move on to the top 20 characters from Nickelodeon All Star Brawl. And first up, I'm starting with a surprise pick not many of you are expecting. Now, let's get started. Number 20, Team Timbers from Welcome to the Wane. So, Welcome to the Wane was a show I was definitely interested in watching, but it's extremely hard to find because Nickelodeon preempted the show and eventually dumped it to Nicktoons. So by the time I could watch it on TV, the season finale dropped and I missed what seems like a really great series. As of writing this, I'm 9 episodes in alongside the pilot, and while I have one minor issue with the show, I think it's solid. And now, I don't consider this a Gravity Falls ripoff. Just because they're about preteens solving mysteries with supernatural creatures doesn't mean Wayne ripped off Gravity Falls. That's like saying any show about people under the age of 18 solving mysteries ripped off Scooby-Doo, and before anyone says that the monsters in Scooby-Doo weren't real, I'm trying to make a point, and some of them were in the movies in Mystery Incorporated. Either way, Welcome to the Wane is a good show, very underrated, and I definitely think the franchise deserves at least one rep. Only question is who to include, and I'm torn between 4 characters from most possible to least. Now, the protagonist trio would work best with Anzi, the Nickelodeon Indian protagonist who isn't divisive, unlike the one I'll get to later, using his zigzag Zord for his normals and smash attacks, while for his special, Ollie and Saraline would use the Grapevine and Snatch Atoms as recoveries, using them for long-range grabs, tossing other opponents aside, and snacking them for long range. And for their super move, my guess would be Anzi uses the Rainbow Gas to create a giant Glico Man to attack the opponent, while Saraline and Ollie use the mech suit they made in the same episode for the robot to follow and hit anyone in its path. The second character that I consider that would make the most sense is Andre. He's an amnesiac vampire who the protagonists try to help figure out their identity. For his normals, he's surprisingly good at martial arts, and for his special moves, he gains energy powers when using the Rainbow Gas. For his big super, I can see him summoning all the vampires from Glamsterdam to rain down and bombard the opponents. I also consider Tony Stanza since he's kind of like the Meta Knight to the Team Timbers Kirby, but I haven't watched enough to figure out a moveset for him. And from what I saw of the other Team Timbers members, I think Goodness would be a good fit. She's a ninja, she's the best fighter of the team out of the 10, and has a ton of weapons, including what sounds like a chakram, but it's been a while since I've seen her debut episode. Overall, I think going with the Anzi, Ollie, and Saraline trio works best, and Welcome to the Wane is a cool show if you give it a chance and judge it fairly. I definitely love to see it on the roster, even if it's in last place amongst the choices I would want. Mikey. Kappa Mikey, well, Mikey Simon himself, would be such an awesome addition. The show was a work-com parody of Japanese shows. The theme song was made by the band Beat Crusaders that worked on openings for Bleach, and while it has detractors, it's pretty much a cult classic for a reason, and Mikey would work great as a lethal joke character by playing his superhero self, Kappa Mikey. He's got the Acme weapon, Sonic Blaster, Bat Club, Super Bike, and anything from the set he destroys when filming that would work great for a moveset, and he could have a super move where he gets the rest of the cast in their show personas to wail on the enemy with one of their gadgets. The only reason Mikey is so low is because of his legality status. It's not impossible like Poe, but Kappa Mikey is one of those shows where it was never officially declared a Nicktoons, despite the fact that the show was exclusively made for Nicktoons Network. Hence, it was adored by Nicktoons, but Nickelodeon didn't give it as much of a chance when it aired on the main channel. So it might be forgotten, but there's no proof deconfirming it as a Nicktoon, so Mikey makes the list. And he's far from the only superhero I have on the list. Speaking of which... Number 18, Snap White and Rudy from Chalzone. Yeah, I saw so many people requesting Snap, and anytime I would make one of these makeshift rosters, I always remember Chalzone growing up. The problem is I didn't remember him all that much, so I had to do some research and be very creative with this, since, as some people don't actually know, Snap doesn't have superpowers. But I found a way his moveset can work. He can be entirely art and drawing themed. He could phase through attacks like clapping a pair of chalkboard erasers together and hit the opponent with the resulting smoke. He can do counters like going flat and traveling on the ground for a sneak attack like Greninja. He has broom flying mines, and like the Pokemon trainer, Rudy can draw most of these attacks for him like chalk. Heck, for the super and ultimate attack, you can have Rudy and Snap escaping from a villain in the chalk zone that hurts the opponents. And if you're wondering what happened to Chalzone, Season 1 was delayed for 2 years, the time slot for Season 2 was changed to 9:30 p.m. on Fridays with no advertising, and the second half of Season 4 didn't air until 3 years later from 2005 to 2008 at 6 a.m. in the morning, which actually reminds me of another show with decent ratings that Nickelodeon axed. Number 17, Mr. Blick from Catscartch. Yep, another Nickelodeon show with decent ratings, but stretched out to 2 years for its one season and moved to Nicktoons. Gee, I wonder how common being moved to Nicktoons is going to be on this list. But if you don't remember, Catscartch is loosely based off a comic book series called Gear, but is much more lighthearted. An old lady had 3 cats, so when she died, she gave them her home, money, and butler, and the trio fight anything from annoying neighbors to monsters and a zombie herd. And the leader of this trio was Mr. Blick, the de facto leader and greedy black cat that suffered with bad luck, and I could see him working perfectly as a fighter. He could throw a root bear as a projectile, can summon a kraken, maybe as a super, have his brothers Gordon and Waffle assist him, and the gear itself can transform into a spaceship, giant drill, anything's possible for these cats alongside military weapons. And he's not the only talking animal I have on this list, or talking cats. Number 16, Kitty Catwell from T.U.F.F. Puppy. Now, T.U.F.F. Puppy is the show of Butch Hartman's that out of the quartet is the most divisive one, and I'm on the side of people who actually liked it. And if you don't remember the show existing, despite that Season 1 only aired on Nickelodeon before it was moved to Nicktoons and people forgot it had a Season 2 or 3, some people still remember it and at the very least hope for a rep for the series. And there's 2 options: Dudley Puppy or Kitty Catwell are 2 anthropomorphic leads. The question is, which one to pick? Now, I'm fine with Dudley, and Jerry Trainer would most likely return if he was asked to reprise his role. He's done it already. But it feels like Kitty is more likable amongst general audiences and no furry jokes. She's more competent, athletic, and experienced. Not only is she skilled at martial arts to the point where her claws are registered with lethal weapons, she's skilled with weapons, gadgets, and disguises. She could be a rushdown fighter using martial arts and her claws, using firearms and gadgets to hit the opponent from afar and drag them close to her. And she's pretty agile, so she could have a counter where she delivers a swift counter attack like the Fire Emblem characters in Smash Bros. And for what it's worth, she did make it into Nicktoons MLB. Now, my next character is a weird one, but similar to Kitty in terms of secondary protagonists, I can see this person working, even though talking about the protagonist of that show would come later soon. You'll see exactly who I'm talking about, but for now, let me remind you of... Number 15, Sheen Estevez from Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. Well, this choice is going to be controversial. Sheen was pretty loved in Jimmy Neutron, but whatever happened behind the scenes, he lost a lot of likability in Planet Sheen. The original plan for that show was to plan to be a lot more serious and make Sheen more likable, but that sadly ended up spreading to the rest of the cast but him. I know the creator admitted Sheen only worked in small doses, but if you remember Sheen's traits from the original series, he's much more likable of a character, and he's much more viable as a fighter for this game. He can throw his comic books around as a range attack. He has that time where he became a genius, which allowed him to get telekinetic and psychic powers. He has martial arts skills from the Crouch and Jimmy Hidden Sheen episode. He can summon the Atomic Monkey Special Forces, and for his ultimate move, Mega Ultra Sheen. One question: Which would be better, the Kamehameha he uses or squaring the opponent with llama milk from the udders? So Sheen would be a great fighter for All Star Brawl. Next, I have a fighter some of you are expecting, some of you aren't, and some of you might have asked why they aren't on their honorable mentions. Well, time to beat this dead horse before it gets started. Or should I say snake? Number 14, Sanjay and Craig. Wow, did I forget how divisive this show is, but yes, I actually think Sanjay and Craig would be great fighters for the game. Back in Cartoon Network Punch Time Explosion XL, they had two characters fight as one. You had Mac and Blue, Chowder and Kimchi, and finally Billy and Mandy. Unlike the Ice Climbers, they didn't separate. They would attack at the same time, which would allow them decent range, or one character would use the other one as an attack, but would immediately return to the player, or had moves where they didn't have to separate, so they weren't exactly puppet fighters. And Sanjay and Craig can fit that mold perfectly. They fought a puma. Craig eats so much you could make a move where he absorbs projectiles. Sanjay can use him as a whip as well and make him an anti-zoner. And yes, the fart humor can work as fighting moves like Chowder and Kimchi did in Punch Time Explosion. Look, Sanjay and Craig gets a lot of flack, but I don't remember it being all that bad, especially compared to Munson as a Beast. A lot of people generally enjoyed Seasons 2 and 3 as huge leaps in quality, and if you give the show a chance or they become playable fighters, I'd welcome them with open arms. Now, I know people will disagree with this choice, so the next character is going to be someone from Very Odd Parents, and I'm betting some of you won't be expecting this one. Number 13, Crimson Chin from the Very Odd Parents. Crimson Chin has to be in this game. You're making a Nickelodeon fighting game with superheroes, characters with wild personalities, and are animated in design and tone. You bet your buns that Crimson Chin should make this roster. He's literally Superman meets All Might with Chin-based superpowers based on Spider-Man's origins, and fighting-wise, he would basically be Captain Falcon meets Max Brass, but actually has good mobility. Tell me this guy wouldn't work as a playable character. Besides, we already got Power Toast Man, and in terms of Very Odd Parents, he's literally the ensemble dark horse. Now, we have enough heroes on this wish list, but now let's get a little darker. Nickelodeon's home to Western animation's iconic protagonists, but we need the characters that are more darker, more twisted, sinister, villainous you can say. But the next character I have in store for you is a bit more, how I'd say, fiendish. Number 12, Vendetta from Making Fiends. Yeah, this is a weird left out of field pick, to the point I don't think even hardcore Nickelodeon fans remember her to an extent, but as the trailer showed, you need characters in these type of rosters that make people go, wait, who? Oh wait, them? So what's the deal with Making Fiends? Well, it started off as a spin-off of an online series of the same name created by Amy Winfrey and started airing on Nicktoons in 2008 of October, and only on Nicktoons. The show is about Charlotte, a sweet girl that's new to Clanburg, and meets Vendetta, another girl who makes monsters called Fiends through baking, like baking soda. And Vendetta hates Charlotte, so she tries to harm Charlotte several times, only for it to backfire in her face, and Charlotte either turns the Fiends into friends and forgiving Vendetta, much to the girl's dismay. But only 6 episodes were produced, and the remaining 7 are just drafts. But that doesn't mean I forgot about her, as you can tell from the rest of this list. Vendetta is perfect as a character and a fighter. She's this evil ball of meat who just loves being as cruel and wicked as possible, as well as being a mad scientist, and because of that, she'll be able to fight well for Fiends. Grudge is a giant hamster she can use for charge attacks and defending herself like Isabelle does with her smash attacks. Scissor Fiend can be used for recovering, flying, and slicing the other characters apart. Toupee can be used for trapping on the opponent's head and causing extra damage. And finally, she has her giant kitty, which she can use for her super move. Vendetta is such a fun, odd pick that would be perfect for this game. Now, the next character is from a franchise that was picked by Nickelodeon for a full TV series over Adventure Time, which caused a lot of debate online considering how iconic Adventure Time became. If you know anything about Nickelodeon's early 2010 run, you have a good idea of who I'm picking, but it's not them. Remember, a show can have protagonists you're hit and miss on, and yet there could be a supporting character you like way more. And this next person would be considered the Rock Lee to Naruto and Sasuke. Or in his case, Draco Malfoy to the Harry Potter. Could you tell I only watched Harry Potter for like 10 minutes and barely know anything about the series? Number 11, Kyle the Conjurer from Fanboy and Chum Chum. While this show's main characters are extremely divisive, and from what I've heard, the developers implied that Fanboy and Chum Chum weren't picked for characters that Nick chose for the game. That doesn't mean that the franchise itself has been removed from the board, since as we saw for Blina, Reptar, and Nigel making it in over Ixis, the other Rugrats, and Eliza. And so if we were to get a rep from Fanboy and Chum Chum, Kyle has to be the one that makes the most sense. For those who don't know, Kyle is the preteen wizard, and also a snarky wizard, who was expelled from his old school, the Milkweed Academy for Wizards, and yet no one in the cast believes he has real magic powers, and he hates his rival Sigmund from showing him up, alongside his dislike for Fanboy and Chum Chum that slowly develops into a friendship. He's got an elf sidekick and a Necronomicon alongside his magic wand for his spells, and holy crap, Kyle has a crap ton of spells. Kyle can manipulate energy, summon minotaurs, make random weapons, teleport, enforce mind control, use hypnotism, can fly on his own or with his broomstick, levitate himself in an aura with other objects around, and he can tame a 3-headed dog. Plus he has the super move, Bylock, where he enters this super powerful avatar state that releases everyone's screams or summons people into another dimension, which would make a perfect super. Kyle is the perfect choice for this roster on sheer versatility and potential alone, and I know it's odd to include him amongst the antagonists, but he's an interesting character who slowly goes from hating the titular duo to gaining some respect for them. But now, let's get a villain that's more cutthroat, who will grind anyone into dust. I think the better name for them is, well, halfway through the list at number 10, Shredder. Now here's the thing. I don't mind having only half the turtles in the game as long as we get more representation from the other series, but if we have a 3-character limit pre-franchise, then the one person that makes sense to include as a fighter is Oroku Saki, the Shredder. He's the main antagonist of almost every TMNT incarnation, and even if he's not involved, he's mentioned or brought up somewhere. Now there's one question. Which Shredder should be included? Well, we're using 80s Leo and Mikey, so using 80s Shredder would make sense, but until the Batman vs. TMNT movie, 80s Shredder was kind of a joke. Making him more serious in the movie would be the best way to go, and his super could be the Sato Oshi strike he used against Batman. 2003 Shredder is the only one that's not Oroku Saki, but the Ushram, yet the 2003 version is generally agreed upon to be the most menacing version out of all the Shredders, and it took until Turtles Forever to destroy him for good. But there's also the original 2003 Oroku Saki, who's a demon Shredder, who was a Tengu that was so dangerous that it took the Ninja Tribunal to seal him. Then there's 2012 Oroku Saki, who's more faithful to his original incarnation with a humanoid design, can take on all the turtles and Mutanimal at once, several Triceratons, and whose Super Shredder is still humanoid enough to make him feel monstrous. Then there's Rise's 2018 Shredder, who's so dangerous as a demonic entity, he would be too perfect not to put as a character. He's got limb stretching, magical beams, can stare steel, has an insane speed and durability, but he might be too hard to balance given that his size at full power is overwhelming to say it lightly. So I came up with a compromise. Use 80 Shredder and base him off his Batman vs. TMNT incarnation with the Sato Oshi strike as a charged, strong special move like the Falcon Punch, but for a super move he can use a Super Shredder form based on the 2012 version, and he could have alternate costumes based on his old 3, 12, and Rise incarnations. He'd be strong, fast, and durable, but as a compromise he'd have to get close to attack, kinda like how Kazuya is in Smash Ultimate but without the neutral B, although he could use the shurikens as a ranged attack. Now I have 4 more villains to talk about, and since I talked about Kyle and Shredder, I want to include the strongest female villain of Nickelodeon's lineup, but if you're thinking I'm talking about Azula, well, I hate to break it to you, but I got someone that's even more dangerous than her. Let's just say she's a bit of a cluster of chaos. Number 9, Vexus from My Life as a Teenage Robot. Now in terms of female cartoon villains, Nickelodeon has what I consider the 5 deadliest and nefarious. I already talked about Vendetta, and there's one more on the list we'll get to. We need more villains on this roster, and Azula would be the obvious choice, but we need a villain that makes people go, wait, they added them? You do need the mainstays, but you also need the cult classics. And in terms of female villains, there are 4 more from Nickelodeon that I considered. The one that's higher on the list, Azula, Sultana of the Dead from El Tigre, and finally Vexus herself. Now Azula is great, but honestly she would play a bit too similarly to the person that is at least 2 places above her. We'll get to them soon, and you all know who I'm talking about. And as for Sultana, she would be a deep hit given that she can fire energy blasts and raising an army of skeleton banditos, repair herself, and has Django as her grandson, so he could do some attacks for her. But I wanted to pick someone with a more interesting moveset and could fight on their own, so I'm going with Vexus, the tyrannical insect queen of the cluster. Not only will her ultimate attack be summoning the army of her cluster, her moveset has so much variety. She's got different forms, super strength, technopathy to manipulate different machines, can shapeshift into different forms, use flight, she has her insect's wings, and she has energy beams. Plus, you all know this game having my life as a teenage robot representation would be a great way to give thanks to how horribly it was treated, especially since in the Nicktoons games, Jenny appeared in Nicktoons Attack of the Toybots, but didn't have a role in the story mode since she was unlocked very late game. But before I start talking about another person we can all want, I was torn between 2 villains for this one, and ultimately I came down to a tough decision. Number 8, Vlad Plasmius from Danny Phantom. Now I originally had Plankton on this list, but then I remembered Vlad existed, and since people would give me hell if I didn't include the next person, I had to pick between Plankton and Vlad. Now Plankton would be great as a fighter. He's the main villain of SpongeBob and he has a ton of gadgets and robots to pull from, but I ultimately decided to take him off the list because we already have 3 SpongeBob characters on the roster. I know some people want Larry, Mr. Krabs, Plankton, Mermaid Man, and Barnacle Boy, but SpongeBob has so many characters that Arc System works to make a SpongeBob fighter out of that. And while I'm not one of those people who hate Fire Emblem representation in Smash, part of the reason the Nicktoons Unite games ended with Claws of Doom was because they focused on SpongeBob so much that the other characters were demoted in their own crossover, and I don't want this to end up as SpongeBob featuring Nicktoons All Star Brawl. That and Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2 expanded the roster with so many different franchises that even though they had 4 out of 30 characters, other franchises weren't entirely left out. And Danny Phantom having 2 reps would make fun for the fact that Danny has spent most of the Nicktoons games on his own. Vlad was part of the villainous syndicate in Unite, but in Globs of Doom the heroes teamed up with their respective villains, and people weren't exactly pleased when Technics made it in over Vlad. In fact, Vlad was only a DS exclusive boss. So with a fighting game, let's take one of Nickelodeon's most dangerous villains of the 2000s and Danny Phantom's arch nemesis and put him into the game. A lot of people would point out that he'd fight too similarly to Danny, but I disagree. He's got more control over his ghost form, so why wouldn't he be as fast-paced as Danny is? He'd make up for that more range and power. Plus, he's got ectoplasmic rays, possession, and duplication, which could also use his possession powers as grabs, the energy strike, the ghost shield, energy absorption, and for his ultimate move, the ghost tornado and electro twister, where he waves his cape so fast he creates a massive tornado that deflects any attacks and sends the opponent flying. It's literally the strongest move in Vlad's arsenal, and most of those moves are something Danny has even yet to master until he got older. So we got one more character, and I'm pretty sure he's the one everyone has put on their list, so let's not waste any more time. Number 7, Zuko. Now Zuko being at number 7 on the list might surprise a lot of you who were expecting him higher, but the game already has Aang and Korra. They're on the cover arts of the box. But SpongeBob so far has only 3 representatives, and I think that's the limit a franchise will get. Every Avatar fan has their pick. Toph, Katara, Sokka, Azula, Mako, Bolin, Asami, Kuvira, Zahir, and while most just want the core 5 members of Team Avatar, we're mostly only going to get one at best, and I think Zuko is the best choice. And you may think it's because he's the most popular character in the franchise, but there's one thing people forget about Zuko. Zuko is the most well-rounded fighter of Team Avatar, no cap. Think about it. He's about as fast as Aang without airbending and is more focused and disciplined. Sokka's a better planner, Suki's more acrobatic, but Zuko is just good as improvising and skilled at swordplay and is almost as flexible. And yeah, he has 2 swords. While Katara's better defensively, Zuko is just as creative and he doesn't have her elemental restrictions. And Toph is better senses, but he doesn't have her blindness and is better at fighting in the air than she can. Zuko is perfect for the list. But while Zuko was an anti-villain turned anti-hero, I've got one more villain, and Azula would most likely be a boss instead of a playable character. And there's one more female villain that's equally as iconic as Azula, and you all know exactly who I'm talking about. Number 6, Vicky. The final traditional villain I have on this list, and yes, I picked Vicky over Crocker as the villain for Fairy OddParents. Crocker's great and all, but while he's more associated with Timmy from the fairy side, Vicky is Timmy's most vile arch-enemy, but she's also a babysitter, so I can see people asking how Vicky would work as a playable character. Did you forget how dangerous Vicky is as a fighter? She has darts with her truth serum to keep people from afar, she uses axes, electric saws, beat the crap out of Princess Mandy, who almost took over Yuccopotamia by the way, has spike balls, and I have 2 ideas for Vicky's ultimates. The first would be similar to Heihachi in Captain Falcon's, where she puts all nearby opponents into a torture trap, and the second would be using their magic remote to transform her into her anime form from Channel Chasers. Now from here on out, I'm going to include main protagonists, some of which I know are in most of everyone's top 5, but this next person isn't exactly what I call a hero. He's more conflicted, but if you see the thumbnail, you know him as... Number 5, El Tigre from The Adventures of Manny Rivera. Come on, Nickelodeon, fighting games, El Tigre has to be on this list. If you ask a millennial about a 2000 show about Mexican-themed luchador superheroes and supervillains, you know the first thing that comes to mind. Lucha! Wait, wrong channel. You know, if you're ever thinking Nickelodeon versus Cartoon Network, then let's save that thought for another day. Either way, Manny Rivera is yet another interesting character who, despite his showing winning several Emmy and Annie awards, was cancelled after 1 season because it couldn't beat SpongeBob in ratings. But regardless, Manny's this high for a reason on character and abilities alone. As El Tigre, Manny has an amazing ability to transform into the tiger-themed superhero, but has always struggled between whether or not he wants to be a hero or a villain, and was one of only 2 people throughout several members of his family that can ever pick a side. But he's perfect for a fighting game. He's got his claws for range and can use it like a grappling hook. He has super strength, has massive agility, and he's got a ton of moves for specials. The spinning armadillo, claw shot, spin cyclone, and hero and villain moves such as sensational bowler, atomic slam, mega quake, and for his big super move, it could be his ancient tiger spirit summon, and, or with his family, together they can perform the Rivera Super Macho Blitz. Number 4, Jenny Wakeman, XJ9, My Life as a Teenage Robot. Now, if you don't know about how garbage Nickelodeon is by screwing over this show with it being preempted several times, Season 2 being delayed for a whole year with shifting time slots, had no promotion, then it got cancelled in 2005, but never let the 3rd season of the show air in 2008, while Latin America and Asian countries got the show a year before. But either way, I don't have to explain why Jenny should be a playable character. She was playable in Attack of the Toybots, but didn't get a focus on the plot because she was so unlocked late in the game, and hasn't been in a Nicktoons game since. Yet, she'd be perfect for a fighting game like this. She's got super strength, speed, agility, durability, all forms of EM spectrum vision, those awesome Mucket boosters, Shiva swords, buzzsaw arms, heat guns, the Fist of Fury, fire and ice blasters, drill hair, hand hammer, stun grenade gun, Tesla cannon, hair boomerangs, and other moves I don't have time to mention. Now, for her big super move is going to be a weird hassle, but I think I have an idea. In Hostile Makeover, Vex has planted a bug in Jenny, mutating her into a violent supersized robot to wreck the town, so having Jenny transform into that temporarily would be cool. Or, similar to the scene from the Iron Man 3 movie and Ultron's Level 3 Hyper Combo Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, Jenny gets joined by her XJ sisters as they perform a group combo attack. Now, I have 3 more characters to talk about, and I'm pretty sure these are the big 3 that I know everyone wants, so let's waste no more time because we all know who should be in the roster. Number 3, Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. Now, for some people, Jimmy should be a lock for this game, but the reason he's so high on the list is because I'm not too sure he'll make it in. Jimmy's role as a playable character has always fluctuated between being playable and supporting character in the Nicktoons games. He was present for all 4 games in the quadrilogy, but was only playable in the 3DS version of MLB, and it wasn't even in Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2. Tommy, Gerald, JoJo Siwa, even CatDog got in, but Jimmy Neutron didn't? That ain't right. When you cross over at Nicktoons and Nickelodeon, the center should always be Danny, SpongeBob, Jimmy, and the number 2 person on this list. Heck, Jimmy's a boy genius. Shouldn't his moveset explain himself? He's got Goddard for all types of mobility and travel, including as an attack. He's got cloning machine to use for extra range, other vehicles he can ram into his foes, long-range weapons such as the pants the Pants Eliminator, Cheese Raid, the girl-eating plant. Yes, Jimmy was sexist, but he was a little boy like we were, and dating Cindy mostly helped him grow over that. A Swiss Army laser, a tractor beam raid to grow and throw others around. The laser sword for close range, has enough teleporters he could use as a side special to dodge, and hit the opponent with the energy from the holes into reality. This is not hyperbole. Jimmy Neutron has more inventions than Phineas and Ferb has episodes. 134 inventions to 129 full 22-minute episodes. The only thing for Jimmy is that I can't figure out what his ultimate would be. I considered making it the rocket he uses to fly into the opponent and cause a huge explosion, but Goddard saves him while everyone else gets blown apart. But I wanted to be more creative, so I came up with another idea. In Dino Disaster, Jimmy accidentally brought a dinosaur to life and it attacked Retrofit Elementary, so having that would be his super would be hilarious but fitting. Also, if Maximilian Dood covers the game, he can make a reference to how Nickelodeon added a Dino Crisis reference in a fighting game before Marvel vs. Capcom ever could. Now, I put Jimmy on the list, so number 2 should be obvious. Number 2, Timmy Turner from the Very OddParents. Yes, Timmy is my second most requested character. Yeah, sure, the series took a decline after season 8. 6 through 8 were underrated, don't at me. But FOP has been one of Nickelodeon's most popular series for, past 15 to 16 years it was on? And not including Timmy would be such a disservice. His moveset speaks for himself. With him, Wanda, Cosmo, and Pooh for other attacks and specials, they can have so many things for attacks, tilts, inputs, and specials that homage to their adventures in the series, games, and special moves. Timmy going into Clef the Boy Chin Wonder, Galaximus, any of his events from Wishology, they would all make great super moves. Gigantic laser, web surfing, there's so much potential for a moveset. But the reason Timmy is this high on the list is much more than the others. And why is he even this up? It's because Timmy hasn't been playable in a Nickelodeon console game since 2007. The last time he was in a game was Attack of the Toybots. And okay, look, I know Butch Hartman has been pretty controversial as of late, but this has nothing to do with that since this has been going on with all of these Knicks games. Gloss of Doom had the heroes and villains team up, and Timmy was the only one of the original 4 who didn't make it in. Tak and Tarlok made it in, which pissed some people off. Teknus made it in over Vlad, and Professor Calamitous was replaced with his daughter, Beautiful Gorgeous. And yes, I do like having unexpected characters in my fighting games, but there was no reason Timmy wasn't not included. The only explanation I've heard was that Ella Smart guessed that they didn't want kids to play as an old man and Crocker, so Timmy got the axe even though Teknus was old himself, but we both agree that's stupid, and the second best Nicktoons at the time didn't get any representation in the Nicktoons crossover game. And if that's the case, Timmy has more villains outside of Crocker that could be playable. Vicky, Jorgen Von Strangle is occasionally a bad guy to me. Norm the Genie, heck, make Francis playable. How about Negachin after Crimson Chin was taken over by the Goo? Heck, use Dark Laser, who was in the show before season 6. Remy Buxaplenty, Head Pixie, literally anyone. In fact, with Danny Phantom and Jimmy Neutron's villain choices being so unpredictable, why not use Miss Doombringer? She was easily one of the most popular one-episode character villains that fans were begging to bring back and would actually make a great boss for this game. And as for Nicktoons, MLB, and Kart Racers, Dudley, Kitty, and Danny Phantom all made it in, while Timmy didn't. And in Kart Racers 2, Danny finally made it in, but Jimmy and Timmy were nowhere to be seen. And Butch Hartman has worked on Tough Puppy, Bunsen is a Beast, Very OddParents, and Danny Phantom. Bunsen is the only one who's never been in any of these games, but Timmy was absent from every game after Attack of the Toybots. And it's time to right this wrong. If Danny can make it in and threaded the issues with Creator, so can Timmy. This is literally another chance for the 4 Nicktoons Unite trio, the Nicktoons Unite Quartet to reunite, and it's time for the neglected member of the quartet to make his return. But there's one more character I've yet to talk about, and a lot of people have noted that outside of the Loud House, there aren't that many new faces in the roster. But there's 2 characters I believe that can solve this problem. And if you haven't figured it out yet, my number 1 choice is... Number 1, Mikko and Phi from GlitchTex. And with that out of the way, thank you for watching the video and wait. A large majority of people don't know who the GlitchTex are. Alright, the GlitchTex duo are already there to solve the problem, and this roster has a major problem. See, after 2010, a lot of Nickelodeon shows have been extremely divisive, and a lot of them, while unique, don't really have a ton of action going on to make them worth being in a fighting game. Robot and Monster, maybe Breadwinners, kinda, Harvey Beaks, Pig Goat, Banana Cricket, Bunsen is a Beast, Pinky Malinky, Middle School Moguls, and It's Pony really don't have people that can work as fighters, but GlitchTex does. So why would Mikko and Phi work for this game, and why are they number 1 on my list? See, for those uninitiated, Glitch Text is a Nickelodeon show. They spent years in limbo before dumping the show on Netflix, and is arguably the network's best show since The Loud House, TMNT 2012, and Korra, about 2 teenagers and fellow gamers respectively, who join the Glitch Text, a gaming company that secretly fights sentient video game glitches that escape and become monsters in the real world. And this is a video game where Nickelodeon characters are forced to fight each other by the players. Mikko and Phi hunt down rogue glitches. You can literally make the plot around someone digitizing the Nicktoons into a video game and attacking the real world as glitches, and Mikko and Phi have to restore them to normal. And besides, they're video gamers who fight glitches that come from video games, and in episode 10, Karate Trainer is literally them going through a ton of fighting game homages and battles. And in terms of moveset, you can have 5 Mikko or both of them as one character, and they can do so much. They're agile as hell, but with the powers and upgrades from their gauntlet, they have an arsenal of video game-like abilities. Super speed, RPG gear, the regular sword, shield, gauntlet, blast abilities. The Sanatron would make a good super. Heck, they have digital allies. Ally is Mikko's digital pet bird with a phoenix fire form upgrade that can help Mikko get across the stage, throw fireballs, and has teleportation. Phi's digital ally Alpha is a gorilla like Cyclops with super strength and durability. And if they're separate characters, or they can switch between one another like Pyrrha and Mithra and Zelda and Cheek, you can really do cool stuff with that too. Phi has always been more of a thinker compared to Mikko's gung-ho attitude, so while the two would share similar attributes, he would play more defensively. But with his speed, he'd be able to trap like a zoner and rack up combos through keep-away tactics. While Mikko's much more of a glass cannon, she's fast, and without her glitch skills, she hits like a truck. So she'd be lighter and her attacks would have more cooldown, but her normals will be able to connect easier, and she'd be much focused on rush on and finishing off her opponents more flashy. Kind of like Captain Falcon, but without the air issues. For their super big Final Smash, Ultimate, whatever, it really depends on if they end up as individual or 2-in-1 characters. But I feel like the Sanatron robot they use would make sense, or the RPG upgrades they got from Ridley. But similar to Mega Man's Final Smash from Smash Bros. 4 and Ultimate, I feel like the best thing would have all the glitch checks from the Bailey and Dabney branch join them, where they all do a joint combination blast and blow away all the opponents and glitches nearby. That's my number 1. Put Nickelodeon's 2 gamers into the fighting game, lol. And that's my list. Thanks for watching my first video. This was a bit rushed towards the end, and I really don't have a lot of editing skills or technology. Like, I don't even have a microphone. I'm that broke, sadly. This is all done in iMovie, so thanks for watching if you actually decided to stick through all of this. The music I used was Taskmaster's Marvel vs. Capcom 3 theme because Black Widow is coming out, and the main menu theme from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I sort of modeled this after Dorgy's Arcade's Build a Roster, and I don't really have the same experience as the guy who runs that, but after seeing so many wish lists and a lot of them not talking about most of these characters, I just wanted to do my part and give my insight into characters I think I would want for this game. I don't really have a customary Patreon or something like that, but I have a Wattpad and a memoir on Amazon if you're interested in that, which I will put in the description. 2020 and 2021 has been rough for me, and job applications have been rejection after rejection, so I just wanted to do something fun like this to just take my mind off of things, even if it was a bit more stressful than I thought it would be. In the comments, just let me know the character you would want, D-pics and all. Anyone you're happy with, I added, anyone you're surprised by, anyone from the honorable mentions you would prefer to be playable. There's going to be a lot of opinions on this, and I'm pretty sure there's like tons of videos with like their wish list, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and have a good day. Thanks for watching.